ahead and get going. So, Ted, why don't you go ahead and introduce?
Sure. So I've worked for Paul Harker. He's going to talk to us about AI ops, and he may expose some information that you may have heard, but I would stay tuned because he will also produce maybe some thoughts out of this discussion that you will actually be able to go off with and research. He'll start sparking some information. I don't want to steal his thunder, so without further ado, here's Paul Harker.
All right, thanks, Ted. Hopefully you can see my screen. Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started here. As Ted said, I'm working with him, kind of, starting up CIO National. I've worked for 30 years as a C-level consultant for various companies, different organizations. I am a former Microsoft employee. I was a SME and a practice lead for them. Developed an IT strategy and IT operations and management practice. It was my team that led the ops and management design for Azure, and I got to present on that to Bill Gates. Kind of a highlighted, I think, of my career. I am a former CIO. I've been executive VP of IT, global PMO director. I've run digital transformation practices as a development director for a large federal government practice and various different practices that I developed for them. So, all right, so we'll get right into it. I'm going to discuss a little bit about what AI, what's the industry standard definition. I'm not going to drain a lot of these slides. Just, standard AI definition, machines to learn, reason, adapt based on data and patterns. A lot of people aren't aware that Carnegie Mellon actually created an AI stack back in 2018 and includes three main phases: the act, decide, and perceive, and includes comprehensive ethics oversight. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. And a few points about AI. It is a long-term initiative, for organizations. You will have failures, and so expect them. 73% of all AI initiatives fail. That's a current Gartner statistic. Companies, that utilize AI, though, they do have a competitive advantage in the industry. And another tidbit that people want to be aware of, data scientists, now, as of 2023, they were spending 85% of their time normalizing data. That percentage has been updated by Gartner, and it is trending more towards 40 to 45%. So AI ops, Gartner actually coined the AI ops term, and it kind of does stand now for artificial intelligence for IT operations. But originally, the acronym actually stood for algorithmic IT operations. So a little bit of a tidbit there. But AI ops has two main aspects: machine learning and big data. So, machine learning, continuously evaluate insights, provide continuous fixes and improvements via automation, and of course, collecting and observing holistic data across all IT systems. And we'll get a little bit more into that. So AI ops platforms, there's a number of different platforms that AI ops includes. AI ops enhances IT operational processes, by having anomaly detection, event correlation, root cause analysis. It improves monitoring, service management, and task automation. So a number of different AI ops functions are available. I'm not going to drain this slide here, but AI ops will ingest data from multiple sources. It can be multi-cloud, include infrastructure, networks, applications, other monitoring tools. There's a lot of data analytics that goes on in AI ops. Again, like I said, I'm not going to drain this slide here, but trend analysis, log, evaluation, events, tickets, evaluation, and so on. So AI ops looks at a lot of data from a lot of different areas. And chatbots and virtual attendants are considered to be part of AI ops. So with AI ops, it's important, as is important with most AI initiatives, that you take an incremental approach. So, as I stated, the products perform event correlation, they reduce alerts, anomaly detection, they perform root cause analysis, and we've talked about natural language processing, but some very basic recommendations and guidelines. When you start an AI ops initiative, usually you need to be very specific and have a narrow scope and have specific use cases that you want to address. So you start with low risk, simple automation efforts, and do a stair-step approach here, it shows by the graphic. You will get more complex as you start your AI ops journey. So a stage one, often you're trying to figure out how to reduce false alarms. Excuse me, let me grab a drink here. And then you go on to test patterns, make sure those patterns have value. And then you try to get to a proactive state, how to prevent impacts in IT operations and have AI help assist in that. Stage 4, have it help determine root cause analysis. Can you reduce your mean time to repair? And at a stage 5, how to actually improve services and your service management. Again, I'm not going to drain the slide because we aren't going to have a lot of time here. But that's the main thing we want to do with AI ops: assess patterns and metrics, create proactive data baselines, look for anomalies, how to reduce anomalies and prevent them, and improve our overall operations and management. So, as I said, AI ops, view it as a long-term initiative, and it's really important to communicate this through your organizations. So there are two basic approaches, then domain agnostic, meaning you manage multiple domains like a service provider, or you might be domain centric, private use using inside your own company and your own organization. You very often have a specific focus, look for potential inhibitors that you might have in your organization, your skill sets, your operational maturity, the quality of your data, and that you have data science skills. You define specific use cases. Like I said, you start out very specific, use an incremental approach, start simple and gradually become, more complex in what it is that you manage. With AI ops, you ingest a lot of information, generally logs, metrics, traces, various different events across the entire enterprise. So some example use cases, are laid out there: task automation, knowledge management, historical analysis, change analysis, and so on. And as I stated before, there will be failures. So make sure you communicate through your organization to expect that. You're learning the new technology there. A few considerations for operations. It is important you review your practices and services and the value that they provide. ITIL 4, if people are familiar with that. Are your IT operations mature? A lot of organizations have problems with their IT operations, and they're not very mature. And a lot of people think that bringing in an AI ops tool is going to magically fix that, and that's really not the case. And we will discuss that a little bit more. But most operations are reactive, and you're trying to get to a proactive or even a preemptive state where you have environments that can actually fix themselves at the end of the day. And like I said, I'm not going to drain these slides because we really don't have that much time. But, as much automation as possible, tools and workflows, you need to take a look at that. Events and alerts, are they managed proactively? Are they correlated across platforms and so on? A lot of times AI ops tools will be integrated with other management tools. In mature organizations, I don't know if people are aware of this, but if you're aware of synthetic transactions, it's very common for monitoring tools to have that capability. And, you want to perform and establish baselines, monitor against historical baselines and thresholds, and take into consideration various different year-end, quarter-end type of cycles. Now there's some development considerations that have to be taken into account. Also, log information comes from developers when they develop applications. So they write information out to various different types of logs, excuse me. And so we need to make sure that information that is being logged, that it is correct, it's mature, that we take into account when applications are starting to have issues. We might have to up logging levels. As an example, a lot of applications will have even 2, 3, 4 different various logging levels. So you can get more information and collect those from your logs. Another thing that's very important is to make sure that you have scripts or snippets or executables to correct issues. Make sure that you've got corrective, preventative, proactive guidance for your applications. And, that we know what healthy states, degrading, degraded, failing, and failed states, what are, what causes them, and how to bring an environment back out to a full, healthy running state. And so if we don't understand that, it's very hard to be able to implement that in a tool. So, and if anybody has any questions, let me know. Some considerations for DevOps groups that they need to consider. As I stated, they develop the logs. They actually, define what's going to go into the logs. My experience is that the ops side of a DevOps organization, they are quite immature and they struggle to actually, really understand the operational aspects, even of their own applications and their own code. So it's an immature function. Not a lot of DevOps groups are really integrated in with operations, but that is a long-term goal. And so, things that they need to do, they need to work with operations, develop comprehensive knowledge base articles, remediation steps to correct issues, communicate information to operations, like I said, snippets, scripts, executables, and they should have guidance on roles and when to take corrective action and information to, have preventative and proactive actions and communicate that. I've done a lot of different assessments at organizations, just as a quick side note, and, a lot of development groups, they're pulled in as level 3, level 4 support because they develop the applications. And a lot of times they feel like they are being overtasked and that a lot of the support that they provide could be provided by, service desk level 1 or level 2 administrators. And, I've talked to organizations and say, well, if they're being continually asked for information, whose fault is that? It's really their fault because they have not documented information and taken the operational aspects of their application and properly communicated it and trained the appropriate levels to be able to take action. So some industry standard AI ops tools that are on the market. These are collected from, Gartner Magic Quadrant, Forrester, Enterprise Management Associates. I don't know if people are familiar with them. They're a management company based out of Denver. I actually know the person that started that company. But Splunk, and Splunk is probably one of the main industry leaders. They were just purchased by Cisco last month, so now owned by Cisco. ServiceNow, they acquired a Loom AI product back in February 22. IBM with Watson, they have an entire AI ops suite of various different products. And a few others, Science Logic, Datadog, MuleSoft are all very popular products. And one thing to keep in mind when we talk about AI ops, the tools are intended to replace current tools, but they can also augment and collect data from other tools also. So just something to be aware of. Okay. So I'm going to go a little bit into some demonstrations. I didn't know how long we wanted to take this. I was planning on about a 30 to 40 minute presentation, kind of pushed through that a little quickly. But, people let me know, is there anybody on the call without Googling that knows what WBEM is?
Hey, guys, you
See
can
any
put that in
hands?
the chat section if you do, or raise your hand, or put a thumbs up if you don't. Go ahead.
So WBEM is web-based enterprise management is what the acronym stands for. And if you're not familiar with it, the WBEM test is integrated as part of Windows. So I just pulled the instrumentation tester up here. You can connect to a namespace, which this is a default root namespace for the WBEM. And then you can actually view classes and see what objects, see what you can leverage as far as scripting information, performance information, and so on. It's all defined in WBEM. Now, all these underscores, these are reserved system classes. So there's various different classes, various different parameters that are defined by default. And if anybody does any PowerShell or anything, you probably see some things you're familiar with. I'm going to exit this. Now, so how is WBEM implemented in Windows? Well, if you go to Microsoft's implementation of WBEM is WMI, which when you pull up your task manager, it is looking at Windows management information. That's where you get all the properties and performance information, what's going on with the system, CPU, memory usage, and so on. That's all pulled from WMI data, which is Microsoft's implementation of WBEM. So, just standard performance information that you'd see, but that's where the information comes from. So, and also I did want to talk a minute and go through some event logs. So if you go to, event viewer in Windows, you're going to see, all the different logs, all the different information. And the management tools, collect this information from the standard Windows logs. So you've got application, security, system, and so on. Those, logs. As a developer, they write information out to these. For the system, of course, this is Windows system information. And you can get application-specific information out of any of these logs. See some nice warnings I've got on my system there. Security logs, if the audits have been successful, if they've run into any issues, and so on. And with the event viewer, you cannot only look at local system information, you could connect to other systems and look at their logs and their information. So just a quick overview there. So what I'm going to do now is let's take a look at some demonstrations of some of the top leaders in the industry, like Splunk here. Let me see if I can, I've got to move this over into my window. Not really going to do an in-depth, review of this, but, as an example, they have an apps demonstration. I just pulled this video down off of YouTube, and a standard dashboard that Splunk has. They do access their own large-scale data lake that they create from information across all systems in an organization and in an enterprise. And this demo, actually what it does is they're showing what a standard dashboard is, how you can go in and clone a dashboard, create a new dashboard for yourself, and then modify it. And probably the easiest way to, start out with their tool and customize and get a customized dashboard. This video just shows someone who cloned it, and now they can add elements, delete elements, modify elements, and so on as part of that environment. So I'm not going to watch the whole video here, but show how you can add code to elements and so on. So that's one example. Datadog, like I said, is another very popular product in the industry as far as AI ops, all the different platforms and everything that it supports there. Monster of a dashboard that they show there. If we go out here to about, well, here we go, just over a minute, they show the various different types of information that they can collect and that they can analyze with the tool. So again, just another example of a dashboard. They do get into here showing creating your own dashboard again from one of their dashboards, all the different environments that they support, all the products, everything from Azure to AWS to, almost any type of an environment that's out there. So a pretty comprehensive tool. And then same thing for Science Logic. This product is, their demonstration is a little bit more geeky. This guy shows how to build a dashboard. He kind of modeled one here on paper or on a whiteboard. And then he actually demonstrates and shows in this particular video of how to add widgets and create your own custom dashboard at the end of the day. Looking for various types of alerts across systems, how you bring those in, how you correlate those, set up widgets to be able to create your own custom dashboard at the end of the day. So anyway, kind of what this video demonstrates, he goes through quite a bit of detail, but really creating a dashboard at the end of the day. So with that's what I planned to go through. I know we have a little bit of extra time. I do have some backup slides and some details if people do want to discuss actually, how you monitor applications and environments, geeking out a little bit more if there's that interest. But
So
we'll stop
Paul, I do
there
have
and hold up for questions.
Yeah, I do have a question here. Paul, this is from Jose. He said, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. You mentioned that many times the info provided by DevOps teams is not accurate or incomplete. On the other hand, DevOps teams' mindset is to document as little as possible. For example, the Agile Manifesto. What is the middle point on documentation versus Agile? So the cleansing process is not a project in itself.
Right. I don't disagree with that statement. The problem is, though, is if applications are not properly instrumented and documented for operations, more than just a lot of developers do consider their code to be the documentation, on the application. It's pretty common. But if they don't document the various different states that their application can run into, what can happen, lose connectivity to a backend database or web server issues or application server issues or, whatever. What is a determining factor that shows there's that type of an issue, how you fix it, and how you bring it back to a healthy state. That's why I say that's kind of a problem area. And when I worked for Microsoft, a lot of people don't realize that, their management products, their product groups actually were, on the hook for developing what they called management packs for operations manager. So they actually had to go through their application, what information was written out to logs, and how to bring it out of various states. And one thing, I don't know if you noticed, I kind of blew through it pretty quickly here, but if we go back to the event viewer and we take a look at any conditions that, any issues with the system. And let's go to the operating system. And you notice here for every event that's logged, whether it's critical, whether it's a severe, whether it's an informational alert, they have a hyperlink to actually go out and understand what this particular message means. And so, these product groups have actually had to document every condition and the state that they might be in and how to take steps to correct it. And their ops manager actually has had the capability for over 20 years to take automated actions based on specific information in alerts and events. Most customers have just, chosen not to implement it because I think, quite frankly, they were kind of scared, to implement that type of a capability. Now with AI, people are getting more comfortable, with systems being able to take action. But that type of capability has actually been around for a long time. One of the things I did when I was at Microsoft is actually I helped train customers when they developed their own applications, how to properly instrument the application, how to properly log details out into the application logs, how to create different event levels. And I actually wrote some management packs when I was at Microsoft, one for Siebel as an example. And if we ran into certain issues that came in the logs, we actually automatically upped the logging level to collect more information, as an example. And it's a little bit of an exercise to really go through and properly instrument an application and properly, have all the rule sets for alerts and events. And that's one thing the AI ops, those tools actually help with. But one thing I do want to call out as part of this, if the necessary information to correct an action is not in the logs, then there's nothing for AI to evaluate and assess and take action on. So that's what's so important about the operational aspect from DevOps, is there has to be good information in the logs for the tools to be able to analyze and then take corrective action. So long-winded answer, but hopefully that answered the question.
All right, thanks a lot, Paul. So I got another one here. It says, can you just discuss some of the most common challenges that organizations might face when implementing AI ops? Can you do one or two of them, and then how can they effectively address these issues?
Yeah, there is the number one that I stated is, not understanding that, maybe the information that they need may not be in the logs. And so there does need to be a lot of work and interaction between development and DevOps and the, ops monitoring group that's implementing the ops tool. The other thing is making sure that their data is holistic, that they have a good overall, database syslog of all logs from all elements in the operational organization, not only servers and systems, but, all the network equipment, cloud information as much as you can. And if there's interest in that, I actually have some slides around, how AWS and Microsoft instrument their environments and what they recommend as far as being able to monitor their environments. Now, when you are using Azure or AWS, you're basically using infrastructure as a service, right? For the core components and everything that the applications that you create run on top of. So, there's that aspect to it too. So hopefully did I answer both questions? I apologize.
No, I was just kind of asking the question. I got a follow on to that. How does AI ops kind of bridge with Internet of Things? Is there even a link there, or what could be a link there?
Well, absolutely. It's just the devices that are on the edge, the cloud edge devices, the Internet of Things. Again, they need to be logging information about their usage. And everything should also have, as we talked about WMI and WBEM, also performance data, performance information available that the monitoring solutions, the AI ops tools, can go out and access and ingest. So, the important thing would be even edge devices or Internet of Things, you need to collect all that information from a logging and performance perspective and put it into a centralized database so the tools can go through and analyze that data and that information.
So the database, a centralized database, could that be any type of database, or are we specifically like a SQL database or a structured database like that?
Well, it does depend on the vendors. Like the vendors have their own specific databases and data sets, and they can ingest standard log type information across all vendors. So, they do put it into kind of a proprietary database. They generally are SQL based. Now, all of these tools are cloud based tools. Some vendors do have the ability to take their products and put them local in a local data center. So basically have a non-cloud localized version of that product. But for the most part, they are cloud-based tools and capabilities. And so their architecture is up in the cloud.
Very good. All right, so I got two came in kind of at the same time. One from Jose and one from Mel. We'll do Jose's first, and he asked, how much can you reduce the cleansing effort by having a UCMDB well populated, including application status, live backup, decommissions, etc. If you need any more, if you need him to figure out what that is more, let me know. I'll get him to explain more.
Well, no, I understand what he's saying, and to the point he's making is if you have all this data that you're bringing in, and you're bringing into a common centralized database, there is the potential to have a lot of duplicative data. So if you have an issue, you could have that same issue across a lot of multiple logs on a lot of different multiple systems that end up being in the centralized database. So hopefully I understand that's kind of where he's coming from. The tools do have the capability to actually monitor events, and they're smart enough to know that an additional event may be the same event based on another system. So they do have the ability to reduce the number of duplicative alarms and events. They will do a lot of summary and summarization on those type of events. But to the point that he was making, it is important to make sure that people understand the data, and thus the data scientists, and having to, quite frankly, look at a lot of information and determine if there is a lot of duplicative data that could cause a lot of additional AI analysis when at the end of the day, hopefully it's not necessary, right? But, hopefully so we don't have multiple duplicative alerts and events and so on that the tools have to evaluate.
Okay. All right, and this is from Mel. It's a little bit longer question. It deals with the security. He says, look, he's looking for tools that run with Postgre SQL as well as Java and Linux. We use Splunk in the dev environment to help configuration managers to solve deployment environments. The issues we found is that the ops side uses Splunk in a different way. They purposely keep ops data out of our permissions. There are times when we need to compare dev Splunk to ops Splunk. Can you give us some more color on that?
Well, I actually ran into that situation with the government contractor that where I was developing an AIOps practice, and we had the same situation. Some people were using the same tools in the organization in a different way. And exactly what you just described, we had that same kind of situation where security was using Splunk, and they had gone in and, added additional rules and events and so on, and analyzing more from a security perspective, more so than the operational side of the house did. And so you're right, you can end up with different um, variants of the tools based on configuration and how the teams want to use the tools and what information. My comment on that would be is, that's definitely problematic. You would hopefully take an enterprise approach to everything you do with these types of tools. Now, in development, yes, they may be looking for certain types of things, but my argument would be, why wouldn't you also want that in production? And same thing from a security perspective. If you had a version of Splunk that was very customized for security, again, why would you not want that also implemented in production? So it's more of an overall methodology and approach, I guess I would say, for global operations that hopefully, the organization can work together and have utilized the tools to the best capability in all environments.
Okay, yeah. Mel just commented. He said he needs that some things are too sensitive sometimes to have the same tool working in two different areas. So interesting. Let's see.
Hey,
Any
Brad, do you
questions?
mind if I interject real quick?
Please do, Ted. Go
So
ahead.
Mel, let's talk about Mel Reiser. He is a very dedicated professional to the success of our nation. He is working down at Cape Canaveral with SpaceX. And Mel, we really appreciate you helping the SpaceX effort. So when he speaks, he's speaking from that area that Paul and he have intersects. So Mel, keep up the questions. We really appreciate you joining.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ted.
Well,
Thanks, Mel.
and let me interject then there a little bit, Brad, that,
Sure.
To the point Ted made, that is very often the case, especially when you get into different security levels, different IL 3, 4, 5 type sensitive information, and understanding that security can be more sensitive.
Mhm.
So I don't disagree, that Mel, maybe it does make sense because of the sensitivity of the data that you would have your own instance of that. My only caution around that would be very careful about, the number of the same tools that exist in the environment. That's the perspective I was coming from. Now, definitely from a security perspective, it could be classification, sensitivity of the data. Absolutely, there may be different versions of the tools required in those type of environments.
All right, Mel's typing some more here. I see. Let's see what he comes back with. And then Paul, if you want to get those extra slides up and running, we can go to those next. Let's see.
Let's do that real quick.
Yeah.
This slide, I talk about management, operations, and automation. And this is from an application health perspective. This was something that I created that, was more informational. For this large government contractor, I was kind of a driver in a think tank, if you will. A lot of what I created as far as practices and capabilities were recommendations that groups would then utilize as they're going out and bidding government work and working with government customers.
Hey, Paul,
So
you're still
one of
on
the
the
things I
question.
wanted to make sure that
You're still on the question slide. If you want to, I don't know if you're migrating or advancing to the next slide or not, but we still see the Q&A slide.
yeah, I did advance. Are you seeing a slide on management, operations, and automation?
There we go. Now we see it. Okay, go ahead. Continue, please. Thank you.
I guess there was just a delay there. But their applications, it's interesting in all the various components that can be involved, the architectures, environments can be very complex. And, as I'm talking about here, we talked about logging information, defining maybe even alarm alert conditions or conditions when an application is starting to have issues, starting to perform poorly before it has significant impact on the users and so on. But we want to make sure that we define what all the states are that an application can go into. Like I said, it's something starting to degrade. It's now degraded. It's starting to fail. It is in a failing and now a failed state, and how to bring it back out of all of those states. So we also need to define, well, what indicates each of those states? When is an app starting to fail? What is it? And one thing I call out here is what I refer to as a healthy sinus rhythm. Resources, queues, number of processes going up and down, indicated by the yellow line in this graph that's going up and down. So as processes are processing data in the application, they're going to go through ups and downs. They're going to process information out of queues that's going to be complete. They're going to read in the next cycle of data and so on. And so their performance goes up and down, but it's in a pretty much a healthy sinus rhythm at the end of the day, if you will. So you look for those types of things. You look for parameters around performance and so on. And that these processes are processing data don't go into a failed state like the green line there. A hung indicates a hung process where your utilization just goes up and then it peaks at 100% and it never comes back down, right? That indicates an unhealthy process that's running on the system and probably needs to be killed or needs to go away. And that's some action that an automated tool could take as an example. Don't want to go through these too much here, but and like I said, all the various states and how we can bring those back and how we can recover from those. Part of this is also looking at available resources, max, mins, averages, thresholds on memory, CPU, network, disk, and so on, number of processes, queue size, and so on. So I kind of put all these in a single graphic to try and give to a development group as an example, so they could understand the perspective and where I was coming from. And then those groups giving prescriptive guidance. The only people that can provide guidance on an application is actually from development. So again, kind of going back to that and calling that out. Recovery scenarios, when to increase logging, when to involve and escalate and go up to level 3, level 4 architects and engineers. And maybe even creating run books for their application for a basic help desk as an example. But that all comes out of this. I'll hit two more things real quickly and then I'll stop here. One of the things I did was I took recommendations for monitoring and instrumentation best practices for Azure as an example. And this is what they recommend for designing an application for operations and monitoring escalations, incident response, and everything, and their tools and what all is included. How to, develop an application for self-healing capabilities and the considerations, the things you need to include, how you detect failures, respond to them gracefully, log and monitor failures for operational insight and so on, cloud app monitoring best practices, monitoring the diagnostic scenarios. I kind of have them here, but I actually have the reference materials in the links here and their process flow and everything. I did the same thing for AWS. And so their recommendations on how you instrument and monitor and their best practices. So, and they use a product called CloudWatch. And so it's how you monitor and manage the AWS infrastructure components, to monitor EC2 instances you can even extend it onto on-site OSs and applications and all the various, ingesting logs, event bridge for event automation and so on. And again, I have reference material to all the documentation. And I actually went through and did an analysis of this, both for AWS and Azure. It's about 1,400 pages worth of documentation, but how you actually properly build on top of their environments, and when you deploy on top of the environments, how you actually monitor those. That's it for my backup slides. Oh, Brad, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. We have another question here. David, I apologize for being a little tardy on this, but he goes, what are the most effective strategies for navigating the bureaucratic obstacles to successfully implement AI ops? That's kind of a loaded question, but I'll let you go ahead and respond.
That's very much a loaded question. Well, as I said, in the beginning of this, you want to make sure that you have a specific use case defined that you want to go after, that you want to improve. Maybe your organization suffers from alarm fatigue is an industry standard term. If you get so many alarms and alerts for the same types of things all the time, you get to a point where you tend to ignore them, right? Which is not a good state to be in. So you look for specific examples such as that, or improving response time and metrics on service desk tickets, or, pick a specific, AI ops project, if you will, and start with that. And quite frankly, you make it simple. Don't try to, bite off the entire world when you go out and do an initial implementation. And that's what your project should be focused on. And that's why I prefaced through the slide presentation so much about caution your upper management that there might be issues. There probably will be failures, but it's a learning curve, just as it is with any AI implementation at the end of the day. So hopefully at the end of the day, what you can do is reduce your operating costs and, provide a significant ROI and reduce your TCO at the end of the day. That's the message you're trying to send to your management. Excuse me.
Thanks, Paul. Just a follow-on question. What would be like one or two different examples of a small type project that would be good candidate for an AI ops implementation?
Excuse me. Well, just as I said, I think what I would do is take a look at something that should be relatively simple, something that might be semi-problematic in your organization, like the number of service desk tickets that are very simple to fix, maybe with a chat bot as an example.
Right.
Access a centralized knowledge base, provide that information to the end users. And quite frankly, the government contractor that I worked with, I was very impressed with the chat bot that the help desk implemented. It was on top of ServiceNow. And you could ask some very simple, basic questions. And if it didn't have the answer, the first thing it would say is, do you want me to connect you with a representative, or do you want me to open up a ticket for you? And honestly, that was the simplest way to open up a ticket instead of manually going into the system and putting the information in. I'd already put it in the chat bot. It scraped that, put that information in the ticket automatically for me. And I detest chat bots. I really do not like them. But that was one implementation that I saw that was actually done extremely well. And I got in a habit of using it and recommending it to other people because of the simplicity of the way if I can't answer it, what's the next steps? Right. I mean, that's just one example. It could be something as simple as, password resets. How can we implement something, a web page or something? I'm getting out of AI here, but something simple to reduce the number of tickets and the number of cases that come into a help desk or service desk. That's one example. Or like I said, the ops group who's doing the current monitoring and management, what are they getting inundated by?
Right.
And we've got, I know, 5 more minutes. And I saw someone else had a question. But one of the things I always did when I consulted in the space, I would go into customer accounts and I would take their management systems And, usually I'd be called in because they were having problems or issues. But 99% of the time, what they did is they would implement a tool and they would put in every role that they could think of, everything they could monitor and manage and measure. And then they were just overloaded, with information that came back. It just, their dashboards all went red, they didn't know what action to take. And so I would go in and I actually say, look, let's dial this back. We would actually disable everything. And then you would do a very graduated, throttled implementation. You might implement, Windows operating systems first, or basic architectures first, like Active Directory, and make sure you get that environment calmed down so you don't have a lot of alerts and events. And now you move to the next, you know, capability that you're going to monitor, whether it be an application specific or services or whatever that is in the environment.
Yeah, sounds like creating a roadmap for the things you want to monitor instead of just jumping off the cliff and saying, "Hey, we're going to monitor everything." That seems to be the way to do it. Well, Paul, thank you so much for your time today and your presentation. I know I had a great. I learned way too much in this one. Every time we have these things, I learned a lot of information. But thank you so much for the presentation. Everybody, please give a thumbs up or a reaction there. If you do have any questions, you can certainly email us back here. But Ted, I'm going to turn it over to Ted now to close this out. I think he's going to kind of give us a preview of what's in for next month and go from there. So Ted, take it away.
Sure. So next month, we're going to have something extremely exciting and technical. If you haven't heard about custom GPTs from ChatGPT and OpenAI, well, then you should tune in next month and probably share it with your friends. This is something I developed with Dean Tamim. Again, I think he's all over this club. And so it's called Professor Posh. If you want to get a sneak preview, feel free to go out to the store. You have to have a paid-for subscription in ChatGPT and look up Professor Posh. And so we'll be covering some of the nuances about Professor Posh and what he's done. I want to share this with everybody. I just had an interesting conversation this week where someone challenged Copilot and ChatGPT and said, I would never implement anything that's in there. Well, newsflash, I have built out well over 2,000 hours with ChatGPT. So it does work, and it does work really well with PowerShell. So our next meeting will be on May 21st. Our meetings are on the third Tuesday of every month at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You and your join it, and as always, we're still looking for presenters. Brad, where are we? We are
up to June. I think we are up to June. We may have July filled here shortly, but the rest of the year is open. So if anybody wants to does anybody know anybody who knows anything about AI, please have them contact us and we will get them set up here. And just another note on Professor Posh, I am a firm believer, and it is a favorite of mine when I go into ChatGPT because I am in PowerShell all the time. So I can't wait to hear how it was actually made. So thanks. All right, Ted, anything else?
I'd like to call it. We had some really interesting people show up this time, Brad.
Sure.
I think what's exciting is Jose always has good perspective on things, and he was our very first speaker. Well, behind you, Brad was the first speaker, and Jose talked about ethical AI. If you guys want to catch up on any of our previous episodes, it's actually on my YouTube channel, which you'll be getting an email from me, and it will be in there. So we capture these and we share them, but we don't share them right away. Brad and I do have day jobs. And so we try to, keep up as fast as we can, but we're a little slow getting to the web. But I would definitely recommend that you check out Jose's ethical AI in there. I just like to kind of run through. We have a nice small group. This is about how Brad and I started networking 15 years ago.
Yeah,
it was about 10 people. I mean, you remember this, Brad?
I do.
We were just kind of shoved in the corner of a space there at Microsoft in Austin. They didn't know what to do.
I think it was a team room at first, wasn't it? And then we expanded to one of the bigger rooms.
Yeah, we had a round circle table and there wasn't enough chairs. I mean, yeah, so it was a fun time. And that's what we're doing here, you guys, is we're trying to create an area where people can go and ask questions. And, So like, let me just call out some people here that I'll just run through the roll call. So David Dean's on here. He has an incredible amount of experience from technical to management. And he also posted that he'll post from time to time about people he knows that are hiring as well. Also, we've got Ronnie Gilbertson with us. He's under Ronnie. And Ronnie was a director manager at Partner of the Year. And it was from Microsoft Partner of the Year perspective here in North America, very successful company. So, and then we had Mel Reiser. Of course, I introduced him. We've had Annette join. She's just had to drop because I just got a message from her. But Annette was actually part of the PM team at Microsoft that worked with project management and Copilot. Okay. So my point is, and we have, of course, then we have a developer amongst us. Thank you for putting up with us, Greg. But Greg is coming at us from a developer perspective, okay? And if you look at Greg's work that he publishes on LinkedIn, it's really interesting. He can do everything from mixed reality to C# and web development. It's a pretty interesting resume. I think, and then we have Tom Batts. And Tom Batts is located in the Austin, Texas area. He is intimate with a company that's in storage. I don't want to say too much about that. You can look him up on LinkedIn, but he's had a very successful career as well. So everyone on here that I'm mentioning, this is kind of funny, has over 15 years of experience. It's not often that we're going to get a group together that has this much experience. And so we really appreciate you guys showing up. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Ted. And everybody, thank you so much for showing up. Please tell your friends for next month at May 21st at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we look forward to even more discussions. And thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you next month. Bye-bye.